Hey guys, good afternoon. My name is Hussein and I'm here today to give you an overlook about the role of the Fed. And but before everything, we have two big questions, which are: do we really need the Fed or we don't? So John is gonna explain why we need the Fed, and David's gonna explain why we don't need the Fed. Later, Tom is gonna give you a conclusion about what we think is best for the U.S. economy, and but it's up to you whether or not you think we need the Fed. So for my part, I'm gonna just give you an introduction about the Fed. So the Fed is the central banking of the United States. It was created on December 23rd, 1913, with the enactment of the Federal Reserve Act, in response to a series of financial panic, particularly the Panic of 1907. This showed that after the Panic of 1907, it showed that the market needed some kind of system to overlook the supply of the money. So the Congress passed an act, which is the Federal Reserve Act. But the Federal Reserve has two mandates, but they have three key objectives. They should maximize the full employment, stabilize the price, and moderate long-term interest rates. But after the financial crisis of 2008, we saw that their duty have expanded on supervising and regulating banks, maintaining the stability of financial system, and providing financial services to depository institutions, to the U.S. government, and to foreign official institutions. Yeah, this is just like a picture about the structure of the Fed. We have the Board of Governors, the Federal Open Market Committee, the Federal Reserve Banks, and we have the members bank. We have 3,400 members bank since 1999, and yeah, that's all for me. Thank you. I'm gonna give you my place to John. He's gonna explain why we need the Fed. Peace.
Hi, I'm John. We're going to talk about why we need the Fed. The Fed has many important functions, and it's to conduct the nation's monetary policy by influencing the monetary and credit conditions in the economy in pursuit of employment, stable prices, and moderate long-term interest rates. They also need to supervise and regulate to ensure safety and soundness of the nation's banking and financial system, and also to provide financial services to depository institutions, the government and the foreign official institutions. If eliminated, we wouldn't know. We would have to go to other regulators or private firms, and we don't know exactly how that would work out. And inflation needs to be kept in check. So without the Fed, we need to figure out a way to do that. Why we need the Fed? The two major functions are the supervision and monetary policy. The supervision, they oversee a number of financial firms such as banking, holding companies, state chartered banks within the Federal Reserve System, and foreign branches of member banks. The key role in being supervisor for these banks. It also helps to understand what is going on in the financial system and helps to solve financial and macro-prudential policies through the supervision. Also through supervision, you learn about the current banking system, which can help with ensuring financial stability and can help banks because the Fed has a lot of experience and data about the economy. The second major function is the monetary policy, and from this policy, the government allows a lot of freedom so they can control the price stability and employment exactly the way they want it for the rest of the economy. And if the Fed controls the policy, there'd be no bias towards inflation like it would be if it was in charge, if like the Congress was in charge of it. And they have a better job at achieving price stability and more flexibility than a commodity standard that ties money supplies to goals. Before the Fed was created, there was many problems. There was many different currencies issued, and this caused all the currencies were worth different amounts. And so some were backed by gold, and others were backed by government bonds. And banks would not have the ability to give a customer a proper withdrawal because they wouldn't know exactly how much the money is worth. So the banks started to collapse, and the economy would go from one extreme to the next very rapidly. which is why they created the Fed, to organize and stabilize the monetary system. And with this, the Fed can now support those jobs for customer and also can now control the inflation so the prices won't rise too quickly, and to supply the currency in order to prevent a recession. The crisis of 2008 is a perfect example as to why we do need the Fed. What happened in the crisis is the companies in the mortgage business began to collapse, unable to finance the investors, they started to lose faith and judgment of the grading agencies that the companies were offering at low risk. So they came up with two ways to fix it. The short-term ways was to offset the lack of private funding. They started lending to troubled financial firms and agreed to help JP Morgan Chase salvage of the largest causality, which was Bear Stearns. And in the long term, the Fed began to turn their attention to long-term project of reviving the company. It had two strategies to help this, and it was to reduce the short-term interest rates nearly to zero and to start piling up mortgage bonds and treasuries. As Mr. Bernanke, the former chairman of the Fed, once said, the Fed doubles Wall Street's safety net to $400 billion and also begins to expand its efforts to pump dollars into foreign markets through swap agreements with the European and Swiss central banks, which is the reason why we need the Fed. I will now turn it over to Dave so he can talk about why we don't need the Fed.
I'm David, and I'm going to be talking about if the Fed was a good idea, if it wasn't. The Great Depression left a black mark on the nation's central bank that also expanded the bank's powers. In 1913, the dollar was defined in terms of gold. Today we have pure fiat money, which is inconvertible paper money made legal tender by a government decree. The Federal Reserve is the largest buyer of U.S. public debt, which enables the government to live beyond its means. We are left wondering the question, would we have been better off sticking to the rules of the gold standard? Various experts have considered this question since the Fed's establishment in 1913. There have been a few years of monetary stability under the Fed. There was a time of significant success in the 1920s when the Fed was constrained by the post-war, modified gold standard, and economic and fiscal policies of the Harding and Coolidge administrations. Inflation remained low after the end of the Korean War. Some think that this was due to the Fed obtaining independence from the Treasury, but it was really due to President Eisenhower's dislike of deficit spending. Finally, there was the great moderation from the late 1980s to the early 2000s. This was due to the Fed being rule-bound by the Taylor Rule. Central banks have been around for a long time and have evolved as economies and governments changed. They are usually given the responsibility to protect and preserve the value or purchasing power of currency. The Fed does this by buying or selling assets in order to manage growth of money and credit. This ability gives them the power to intervene in financial markets through the quantity of transactions as well as the types of assets that it can buy and sell. So it is appropriate for governments to establish their central banks with constraints. In recent years, we have seen many of these limits stretched. The Fed and many other central banks have taken steps to address global financial crises. These steps have challenged the accepted boundaries of central banking. Many discussions about the Fed's mandate seem to forget the emphasis on the long run. Many have come to accept that monetary policy can and should attempt to manage fluctuations in employment. The Fed has also ventured into the realm of fiscal policy by its purchase programs of assets that target specific industries and individual firms. If we limit the Fed's purchases to Treasury securities and return the Fed's balance sheet to an all-Treasury portfolio, this would limit the ability of the Fed to engage in credit policies that target specific industries. Another way to constrain central bank actions is to direct the monetary authority to conduct policy in a rule-like manner. Rules allow for simpler and more effective communication of policy decisions. There are those who likely don't see the need to reform, but a look at the Fed's unattractive performance over the past 100 years shows how clearly it's needed. On its watch, America went through the Great Depression, the Great Inflation, and the Great Recession. Even excluding the Great Depression, real output has been no more stable than in the pre-Fed era. Not only monetary scholars, but various representatives are looking for a change, offering legislation for a national monetary commission to consider reforms to the Fed. Other scholars support free banking, banking without a central bank trying to steer the economy, or a return to a gold or alternative commodity standard. These positions overlap and are together perhaps the most realistic and achievable alternative to central banking. Looking at history to help today's policymaking shows that when the Fed had conservative fiscal administrations that were bound by rules, America's economy did better. The big question is whether the Fed outlived its purpose and competitive banking and a commodity standard should take its place. I'm now going to pass it to Tom to wrap it all up.
Hi, my name is Tom, and I'm here to express our team's conclusion on whether or not we need the Fed. We have looked at both what the role of the Fed is, its advantages and disadvantages, and now we come to the conclusion of whether or not the Fed was a good idea. Although the Fed is not perfect, it is essential for 3 reasons. 1, it's beneficial to the US. 2nd, it provides and maintains stability in our economy. And 3, there's really no other positive alternative we have. And we'll break down we'll look each idea in depth. So first reason, it's beneficial to the US. It's helped us through tough economic times and financial crises such as the Great Depression and the Great Recession of 2008. It conducts monetary policy in an unbiased manner and influences maximum growth. And it does this by both reaching maximum employment and keeping inflation under control. And without this, without the Fed, there would be not much control in the economy. Maintaining stability. It's probably the most important task of the Fed, and it has a lot of freedom given by the government to do so. And we see these freedoms include changing the interest rate, purchasing assets, and conducting lending activities, but only when there's an emergency. Reason 3, there's no other positive alternative. The Fed is unbiased and is influenced based on the performance of the economy. If there was bias and no central bank or Federal Reserve, banks would be able to charge an interest rate that they want, resulting in an unpredictable interest rate and inflation being out of control. The Federal Reserve also contains economic experts, and no elected official in Congress is really suited for the job, or even any private sector firm is also not suited for the job. These tasks are unique to Fed, and they can only accomplish it in a manner that helps the economy and provides certainty of where the economy is going. We thank you for listening to our presentation and for looking into our conclusion and both why the Fed was a good idea or not. Now, our opinion is the Fed was a good idea. However, that's not always going to be the right answer in our minds. So we hope that you take this information that we have given you and come up with the conclusions of your own and decide for yourself whether or not the Fed was a good idea. Thank you.